Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the funds research section of O&M Profiler. We've obviously looked at funds already, whether it be selecting for a new switching quote or for a new transfer quote, whatever it might be, and we've looked at Smart Pace, we've looked at the fund picker. We're going to have a look at the full-blown fund research section today. So you can get into this from a quote, or you can go in from the home screen, same as all the other sections, with its own dedicated button for fund research. The first time you go into fund research, you're going to get prompted to enter some search criteria. Same as every other part of the system, if it doesn't have enough information to show you some data, it's going to ask you to input something. So what it's asking us here is, how do we want to search for funds? So there's over 85,000 funds included in the system, and we get a daily feed from Morningstar that brings in all the up-to-date data for each of those. And obviously 85,000, we need to narrow that down to something useful for us to work with. The simplest way to do that is simply to type in the text box. So I can type in here Fundsmith and press enter. And there's our first fund search done. It's the simplest way of doing it, simply searching for text that we recognize, and it'll show us all funds that match that. Perhaps not the most useful in the section, because you could have obviously done that within the quote already. You could have just typed in the picker. So we're probably going to do something a bit meatier when we come to search here. So let's go back into the search section and do a different type of search. So as with every part of the system, all of the magic is under the button at the bottom of the screen. So if I click on fund search, and then the very first thing that I can do under here is amend search. So if you ever find yourself in fund search and you want to make a change to the criteria that you've got, simply click on the amend search button. That's our existing criteria. That's what we've currently got. This time around though, I'm going to search for an ISIN number. I've got one on my clipboard already. That's a particular fund. Again, I could hit enter having pasted that, or just to get in the practice, I could click to perform search. Let's do that. And this time around, as we'd expect, it only brings back a single fund. That's because we told it we want to look for a particular fund with that ISIN. You'll notice that there's some slides at the bottom of the screen with no information on them at the minute. All I've got to do to bring them to life is simply click on the fund I've got in my list. There we go. And now I'm viewing information about that fund. It might be though that I want to view more information about the fund. Let's have a look at some of the other things we can do to show us all the data points that we've got, because there's hundreds of data points behind the scenes about each of these funds. The first and easiest thing we can do is to change what we're looking at in the grid. Up in the top left hand corner here, you'll see my current view is on ratings and charges. So it's showing me Morningstar ratings, it's showing me AMC, TR, OCF. If we click on that, you'll see some of the other things that we can look at. We can look at annualized performance. We can look at the asset breakdown at a very high level between cash, fixed interest, property, equity and other. More performance information. We've got MiFID data there for the funds. My key indicators, that's always a good one. So you may have seen this already in the switching session, for example. You can change what you see in this view. So I've set this up with some relatively random sets of data that I'm showing. But if you want to make a change to that at any point, back to the fund search button at the bottom, and you can see customize. And the first thing it suggests you can do under customize is key indicators. Let's have a quick look at that. Change my key indicators, and you get a list of loads of data points that you can pull into that view. So there's a maximum of 6 that you can include. So if you want to include another one, just untick and tick the one you want. And you'll see it refreshes live in the grid in the background. Let's close the fund search down. Again, there's other screens that we can go into there. You can get different views and all the rest of it. It's worth having a look through those, making sure you're familiar with what you want, and obviously setting up the My Key indicators to reflect some data that you want to see. If we go back to our fund though, one of the things you can do in O&M Profiler is you can dig deeper in any section you're in, whether it's a quote or a search screen like this one. Let's go back to the fund search button, and we're going to view fund details. And this opens up a series of stories. This is our storyboard mode. And what we're seeing here are particular sets of information about this fund. So you can see we've got the fund name there showing us what we're looking at. And we've got fund basics, objective, manager details, all the things you can see there. Now each slide on this dashboard is customizable. So if you don't want one of those, if you want a different one in, you can take it out. You can simply click on the cross to remove fund attributes, for example. Come back to the button at the bottom and add in a new slide. So you see the view slides there. Again, this will show you all of the information we've got about that fund, loads and loads of slides that you can have in. And if you want to include one, you can simply, let's pick on one, and add to dashboard. There you go. So you can get these screens looking exactly as you want them. And that's useful for many reasons. Obviously, it might be that you want to dig in deeper lots and you're going to look at this. It might be that you say, actually, there's only a few key bits of information I want, so I'm going to plonk them on the search screen instead. All of these things you can do, and we'll do a dedicated session around dashboards later on in this series. I'm just going to reset this dashboard back to what it was. Again, that's something useful you can do. If you ever get to a point where you've made a change and you think, oh God, I didn't mean to do that, simply view the dashboards, hit reset, and it'll go back to what it was before you started playing. If you find yourself using dashboards and slides a lot, you can simply pin them. So you get this little pin icon here, and what that does, if I unpin it and then pin it, you'll see it appears at the top of the screen. So I'm telling the system this is something I'm going to do a lot. So I'm going to want quick access to that. Okay. We can go through the rest of these stories. Obviously there's lots of information there. Feel free to do that in your own time. I think for the purpose of keeping these videos nice and quick and fresh, we're not going to go through every slide and every story that we've got. If you want to keep your view nice and clean, you can close this story at any point. So you can click on the button you're on and click close story. Or if you want to have them open and readily available, you don't need to close them. You can simply go back to the fund search. Okay. Now, what I've shown you so far is searching for a single fund with a very simple criteria. What we're going to do next is we're going to search for particular funds that match a set of criteria that I've got. And I'm going to go back to something we just saw with the pinning. So this is pinning, but for a different reason. I've got a fund in my list here, and I'm not sure this is going to stay when I search for my next criteria, but it's a fund I want to keep in the list. So there might be a multitude of reasons why you're doing this. You might be building a portfolio. You might be looking to compare a client's current investment to their new investment. You want to keep a fund in the list irrespective of what search criteria you do next. And in order to do that, you simply click on the pin icon next to it. You'll see it changes into a vertical from horizontal. What that means is that's going to stay in the list no matter what criteria I put in now. So hopefully you can remember how to amend the criteria. If we click on the fund search button again, amend search. Now this time round, let me get rid of my ISIN. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at some specific criteria that I want my funds to have. So I'm only looking for funds in the OICs and unit trust universe. I'm only looking for primary share classes. So you'll see all I'm doing here is I'm clicking on the little expand icon next to it. Finally, I want to look at Morningstar ratings gold funds. So what we've got there is we've got three sets of criteria. We've got OICs and unit trusts, primary share classes, and Morningstar gold ratings. Once we're happy with our criteria, we can click to perform search. There you go, and this time around I've got 26 funds back, so I've got a busier fund screen. You'll notice that my pinned fund has stayed in the list. Now it might be that it matched the criteria anyway, but it doesn't matter. I pinned it, it's in the list. In fact, let's have a look at that. So let's go to our ratings and charges. There you go, perfect. So it doesn't match, it doesn't have a gold rating. Still looks like Morningstar think it's a good fund, but it doesn't have a gold rating, so it wouldn't have been in this list apart from the fact I pinned it. So now that I've got my multiple funds, let's have a look at some of the other things I can do. So let's click on that one that we wanted to keep. Again, our slides at the bottom of the screen have come to life. But what I actually want to do is I want to compare it to one of the funds that does match my criteria. So in order to do this, all I'm doing is holding down the control key and clicking on another fund. You'll see at the top now we've got two selected, and you'll notice that on these comparison slides here, it's showing us the information for both of our funds. So we've got a direct comparison without leaving the fund research area, without doing anything else. We've got a direct comparison between those. We can, in fact, simply print a report now to show us that information. So we can print a comparison dashboard at this point that will show us various bits of information about these two funds that we've selected. So I might want to go a little bit deeper with this comparison though. So in the same way that we could dig a little bit deeper with a single fund, we can dig a little bit deeper with a comparison. We can go into a dedicated compare funds story. And you can see we've got a different story this time. but it's designed to show us that comparison. So we're seeing the key facts, we're seeing the breakdown of the data, performance comparisons, lots of information about these two funds that I've selected. Now, a lot of that information was available on the fund search, so why do we need to come into the comparison screen? Well, let's have a look at some of the other things we can do in here. If I click on the comparison button for where I am, so I was in performance comparison, you'll see there's some extra options under here. Sector averages. So I can choose to add in the sector averages for those funds. Benchmarks. I can choose to add in the FTSE, let's say. The last one I'm going to look at here is time period. So by default, we use what we call best fit. Now that's designed to look as up to 5 years, starting from the earliest point to the latest point where both funds have data. So if you had a fund that was launched only 2 years ago, we'd start from that point. If we had a fund that was, one was 5 years, one was 2 years, we'd only show 2 years, we're showing the best fit. You can go at whatever period you want with a custom time period, so I can simply tick that. I've got no data for that, that's an interesting start. And let's have a look at what my custom time period is. There we go, I've not set it. So if I want to look at January 2016 to January 2019, let's say. Who knows, there might be a specific reason why I want to look at that time period. And now that comparison is done across that period that I've selected. Now if I print my comparison, it will respect that time period and those benchmarks and everything else that we've pulled in. Okay, let's go back to the fund search. So it might be that you're using fund search because you're looking to build a model portfolio. And we're going to do another session on model portfolios in this series. But just quickly for me to show you, if we go back to our fund search option, one of the things we can do here is add selected funds. And then it gives us the option. So we could create a model portfolio from here with these funds in. We could update an existing model portfolio. We could even add them to a client portfolio. So if we wanted to create a simple model, and you can see the options you've got here to automatically close the fund search and open the portfolio, all sorts of different things that you can do. So I'm going to cancel out of that because I don't want to actually create that this time, but that's one of the quick ways to create a model portfolio within the system. Now, just before we finish on fund research, there's a couple of other things I'm going to show you that will save you a huge amount of time going forwards. So the first thing is, if we go back to our amend search, let's say this particular search that I've done here is one I'm going to do often. Maybe I'm building a list of funds that my firm can use, or maybe I'm looking at just good funds for my clients to use and I want to have a set criteria that I'm going to pick every time. If I click on this criteria button at the top here, you can see that you can save, you can load, you can do all sorts of different things under here. I'm going to save this criteria and I'm going to call it my default fund search. Now obviously you can give it something more meaningful. You could call it Morningstar Gold, OICs, whatever it might be. I can simply save that, or I can even save it as a default so that next time I come into fund research it will automatically do that search for me. Let's just hit save. Let's say next time I want to use that, then it's dead easy. Instead of going to the save, I click on criteria, load criteria, and you can see I've got the two there. I've got one that I'd already created with a much more descriptive title and the one that we've just created here. Better still, you can share this with your colleagues. So if you've got multiple logins for the system, you could have someone that's in charge of defining all of this search criteria, and then you say to your firm, and then you say to your colleagues, you must use this search criteria. Tick that, everyone else has now got access to that within my company. The other thing you might want to do though, is you might want to say, I don't want to do this search every time. These are the funds. I've narrowed it down. Of these funds that came out, control click again. I want to use these funds and I'm going to use them over and over again for my clients. Now, obviously, if you save the search, you're going to get all 25 plus that pin one in this case. You're going to get all 25 back. And I might not want all 25. I might just want these 6 that I've selected. So the way around that, if we come back into fund search, is what's called a fund list. So the idea here is we're not saving the criteria, we're saving the specific funds that we've created. So I'm going to save the selected funds to a new list. My new fund list and hit save. There we go. So if I now clear this set of results, so results, clear all, and I'm actually going to clear my criteria as well, then what I want to do going forwards, there's two ways of doing it. I can either go to my fund list section under criteria and tick my new fund list and perform search. Bingo, there's our 6 funds that we were expecting to see. Or let me clear that down again, clear all results. I'm not going to do search criteria this time. I'm going to come out of that completely, and I'm going to go into the fund lists and load my fund list instead, my new fund list. So 2 different ways you can do that. You can see all that that second option does is open the criteria and tick the one that I'm looking to use. It's just a way that you don't need to remember that there's a separate filter to do it. You can get there through the fund search button at the bottom of the screen. Just before we leave fund research, I'm going to show you one more very clever thing. Under more actions, there are several things we can do related to this fund. So this probably is the parent fund because I picked the primary share class, but what if we wanted to look for portfolios I've got investing in this fund, clean alternatives to this fund, all mirror funds for this or sibling funds? You can simply come in, click find mirror funds. It immediately does that search. It finds all of the pension equivalents for that fund, and I can add those into the list as well. There you go. So now I've got 9 funds in this list. I've got the original Fundsmith Equity one, but I've also included the Old Mutual version and 2 Aegon versions available. So you can immediately get access to clean share classes, sibling funds, all that sort of stuff. It might be that you've got a list of ISINs that you just want to get in here. Even easier, add funds using ISINs. You can come in here, simply paste in a load of ISINs, and it will automatically add those into the list for you. So you don't need to go through the process of search for an ISIN, search for an ISIN, search for an ISIN, paste them all in here, and away you go. You get the same options of adding them back into the list. Very last thing I was going to touch on today was the reporting options. So if we just go back to our previous search, let's load it in, just so you get familiar with that process. Load criteria, my default fund search. Click to perform search. So hopefully all of that starts to become familiar. I don't have my PIN fund anymore, so it's now just the 25 matching funds that are included in that. We can view the data for any of them, but we can also print this out. So if we have a quick look under reports, you've got a fund fact sheet and a detailed fund fact sheet, so that'll pull out key information about the fund that I've selected. But what you might want is an audit trail of how you got to this fund, what your search criteria was, what other funds were in the list, and all the rest of it. There are 2 reports that cover that. There's the fund sourcing report and the funds audit report. So the difference between those, fund sourcing will show you the my fund indicators, my key indicators panel. So when we looked at the results set earlier and we were changing those, that's what drives the fund sourcing report. The more detailed one is the funds audit report. Let's just load that and we'll quickly see what that shows us. Okay, so our funds audit report, first and foremost, it shows us the criteria that we've used to search. So remember those, that was Oaks Unit Trust, primary share class and gold rating. It'll also show you how many funds were available for us to pick. So that's the 85,000 that I was talking about at the start. That number goes up all the time, so you'll see that possibly a slightly bigger number when you come to run this yourself. And then what we've got are each of those sets of results for the funds that we have. So the 25 funds that we've got the overview, ratings and charges, annualized performance. Each of those things that was available to us as a drop down to view data about it is included in that, and you can have that available on file to show your process, to show how you arrived at the fund list that you use or the particular fund that you selected. So a really useful part of your audit trail, good for compliance to see how you came to that and all of the core information that you had available to make the decision that you made about the fund selection. Okay, so whether you got to fund search from the home screen or whether you got there through a quote, hopefully now you're much more familiar with how the mechanics of this fund research section works. Let's just look at the final piece of the jigsaw. If I have come from a quote and I want to use this particular fund, add selected fund, and you can see it's my new investment. I've got the option to continue in fund search, so if I want to add in 10 funds and it was going to do multiple searches and all the rest, I can simply untick that box and keep working in fund research and knowing that they're being added to the new investment screen in the background. If it is just the single fund, leave it ticked, and when I click OK, it'll take me back to the fund selection. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. Hopefully you're a bit more familiar with the fund research part of the tool now and how that fits in. The next video we're going to look at will include model portfolios. Thanks for watching.